All right, so we've got virtue theory. It sounds great, right? And in fact, it sounds like it is a system that may be even better for us, and that in fact, we may already consider ourselves to be practitioners of. We may already think of ourselves as people who tend to have a default position in a lot of things. That our way of being is gentle, is truthful, is I'm not sure, empathetic, right? We may have friends who say, oh, you seem to be a very empathetic person. You seem like you are a very kind person. You seem like you are somebody who really enjoys art, right? Is artistic ability a virtue? I don't think it's not, right? Appreciating virtue or appreciating beauty and appreciating music, I think that certainly is a type of virtue, right? So, how does this maybe serve us better than something like a Kantian ethics or utilitarian ethics? Well, in a way, we end up sort of behaving more like maybe a Kantian would, or more like a utilitarian would, simply because our default, our way of being, has enabled us to cultivate virtue that we use in certain situations. We may, for example, be going into something like the healthcare field, or going into the legal field, or going into another field where one of these things that we would call virtue is really important, right? It feels like if you're going to go into the healthcare field, empathy would be an important virtue to cultivate. And that as somebody who maybe was raised by people who are very empathetic, who also has taken the time to cultivate the intellectual discipline that is required in order to become a doctor, a nurse, or a practitioner of health, that the virtue of empathy alongside the knowledge of health is something that's really great, that we might be able to, in situations where we need to make an ethical decision about patient care, we can both refer to the medical things that are necessary. And in cases where a medical rule is not entirely clear, that we may be able to use that empathy, we may be able to use those virtues that we've cultivated in order to make better decisions, right? And we might think of teachers that we have had, that we may think are especially good at certain things, right? Being empathetic, being helpful, knowing when to help and how to help students, striking that balance between letting students get away with a lot of stuff, which is not great, and being way too strict, but allowing students and seeing in students, right, the various types of people that we encounter all the time. You may be one of those people that says, oh, yeah, I can think of a teacher who's like that. They know what to do and what to say at the right time to help me to become a better person as well. We may be modeling ourselves after some of those people. That feels like a really positive side to virtue ethics. Instead of having to always make these calculus decisions that may be more or less or making duty decisions where we really aren't allowing our emotions and our personal considerations into things. Kant, for example, says, take care of your parents when they're sick because it's your duty. And if you do it because you're duty bound, but you don't really have much joy in it or don't see much, again, don't feel very empathetic about doing this, versus somebody that you know who is taking care of their parents not only because, right, it should something they feel like they should do, but also because it's something they want to do and they care deeply. We might think of the person who cares deeply as a better caregiver, right? Are they still providing the same kind of care? Maybe technically they are, but the idea of virtue on top of an ethical system that informs, right, your ethics, or that you have cultivated as your system of ethics, does feel like it could be very valuable. Where, though, might we find some difficulty with this system? Are there any places where we might think of virtue ethics as a little bit inferior, a little bit troubling, because it might not provide us with all the answers, or in cases where we might not know how virtue can really be cultivated? We'll talk about those in the next video.